It was on one of the planets whose name ends with the familiar Majoris. Life went on as usual until hordes of orcs descended upon it from above, sensing vast plunder. The battles were fierce but brief. The local planetary defense forces, as well as the convent of the Sisters of Battle stationed there, could not withstand the green threat. The world was conquered in a matter of weeks and looted, but the orcs did not leave. On the contrary, their numbers grew with each passing day. The fame of war boss called Blind Eye, as well as the promised plunder and a good brawl, attracted orcs from various clans and tribes to this planet. Naturally, there was no shortage of rivalry before Blind Eye solidified his position as the big war boss of the Wa he had created. He had to crack many skulls. The orcs of Blind Eye were already ready to go conquer the galaxy, but the war boss deemed that they needed a gigantic gargant for a proper fight. Enthusiastic about this idea, the orcs eagerly began dismantling all possible factories, processing complexes and thermal power plants to quickly gather as much metal as possible and finally head off somewhere. Among them was Mek Wurdaka Neckstomper, who grumbled now and then. "Not only have we been stuck on this rock of stone, lava and dust for so long, but I've almost figured out how to assemble a stomper from the dead Mechanicum humans," Mek mused, watching as Grotz tried to hack off a power claw from a dead knob with rusty knives. "And yet all kinds of morons, may Mork devour them, keep pestering me. One wants a custom shooter because the las rifles from the Humies won't even hurt a drunken Grot. Another comes bringing dead churchgirls and wants me to weld him mega armor from their suits. I wish we could start on the Gargant already, or else it's really boring. Bet we've gathered enough metal for a new kill cruiser." Mek scratched his chin in irritation and glanced over the rest of the camp, overshadowed by numerous totems and banners of the orc clans. Yet nothing could be taken from Blind Eye, Mek continued to think. He always managed not only to unite the boys but to keep them in check. I can't recall such a number of warriors in our force. He gathered everyone, from the show-offs of the Bad Moons to the treacherous fiends of the Blood Axes. Mek felt no particular fondness for either the former or the latter, but even the thought of an alliance with the Blood Axes made him spit on the ground. Once they had been a big and strong clan, yes, but their time had long passed, all because of their treachery and weakness. No orc will ever ask for something if it can be taken. However, the Blood Axes are different. Due to their constant contact with humans, they have grown softer. During the Darbig party, almost all of them fell in action. The survivors became even more dependent on the humans. They even work for them, scavenging weapons and gear that the humans gather on the battlefields from the bodies of the dead. Moreover, besides working for the humans, the Blood Axes began adopting their tactics. They started killing their enemies not in open combat, as befits a true orc, but stealthily and cunningly, like sneaky ones. Though Mek despised the orcs of this clan, even he occasionally could not deny that in some aspects they surpassed the rest of their brothers. The Blood Axes are even more dangerous in open combat due to their equipment, training and, strangely enough, tactical superiority. Additionally, they do not shy away from negotiations, which allows them to achieve their goals without spilling rivers of blood. As for combat actions, the bands composed of Blood Axes adhere to tactics that closely resemble those of professional Imperial units. All orcs are organized into smaller, more mobile and controllable squads. Long battles side by side with humans taught the Axes to use enfilade fire, deceptive maneuvers, echeloned assaults, and rapid adaptation of their strategy to specific circumstances. The Blood Axe's inclination towards cunning has led to many commandos and stormboys in their ranks, who together form an excellent strike force. Commandos often use stormboys as bait or independently set up ambushes in dense forests or jungles. For the Blood Axes, there is nothing shameful about silently infiltrating the enemy's rear or positions, then swiftly slaughtering all foes in a furious melee. Warlords whose native clan is the Blood Axes typically have a better understanding of tactics and the extensive use of machinery than representatives of other clans, and their raids more often end in victory than defeat. Due to the widespread presence of Imperial technology within the Blood Axes ranks, many of them are seasoned tank aces. One such ace is war boss Badfrag, the tank boss. Badfrag, who has spent most of his life fighting in a modified Mars-pattern chimera, never misses an opportunity to lecture his subordinates and other blood axes on the workings of his war machine. However, more than that, he loves boasting about his collection of battle wagons, unleashing crude firepower on his enemies. Serving under the warlord of the Face Ripper group, the tank boss is the first to land on a planet, sweeping everything in his path with fire from his rusty wagons. Badfrag seeks to expand his collection at every opportunity. Thus, on the Imperial world of Phenos 9, the boss led an attack across an ancient energy bridge that connected the main streets to the rest of the continent. During the assault, the tank's boss's wagons dumped numerous units of Imperial machinery into the boiling sea. After the battle, he forced the Gretchen to retrieve the wreckage to later use them in his future projects. Meanwhile, boss Snikrot the Stalker is the exact opposite of the tank's boss. Snikrot is a seasoned and ruthless Orc commando, leading a large band of Orc special forces known as the Red Skull Commandos. Snikrot earned his reputation during the battles in the equatorial jungles of Armageddon. On dark nights, the Armageddon Orc hunters whisper tales and anecdotes about Snikrot. They speak of him as a ghost, gliding through the jungles, able to traverse dense foliage without disturbing a single leaf. They describe him as a wild hunter who lives for slaughter, with eyes that burn with malice. Hunters also tell of his victims left to bleed out with their eyes gouged and scalps torn off. Snikrot and his red skulls have become a true curse for Armageddon, striking from the shadows again and again, always where the defenders least expect it. No matter how difficult the task, this cunning Orc always succeeds. However, due to their way of life, the Blood Axes constantly face insults from members of other clans. But the Blood Axes pay almost no attention to the mockery. They respond with laughter and a crooked grin. Sometimes, with the same grin, they knock out the teeth of their abuser and walk away much richer than they were a few minutes earlier. Unlike other Orcs, the Blood Axes prefer to use subdued tones and cover their weapons and clothing with camouflage patterns. They are the only clan among the diverse crowd of Orcs that uses camouflage, even though they have never understood how or why it works. As with all things Orc, the Blood Axes' camouflage should not provide any actual concealment. No matter what branches, moss and pieces of Imperial camouflage uniforms they decorate themselves with, such camouflage works excellently, as long as they believe they are invisible. Frequent battles near the Imperium have led many clan members to wear improvised dog tags or adorn their clothing with badges. However, these have no symbolism and are used solely as decorations, unlike real medals and insignia. These are deeply revered among the Blood Axes because they believe they contain the power of the previous owner. The distinguishing mark of this clan is a black banner with crossed bloody axes on a dark green circle. On the other hand, the Bad Moons, though just as boastful, are far more pleasant. At least they are Orcs. They are always flaunting polished armor with gold plating, with pockets and mouths full of teeth. They are real swindlers. It would be easier to train a squig to assemble a stomper than to get anyone from the Bad Moons to sell something at a fair price. Although a couple of punches to the jaw from this clan, and you can consider the haggled price already justified. It's still unclear how their teeth grow so quickly, or why we trade specifically for teeth, but it's still useful to keep Bad Moons nearby. You can always find missing parts with them, or take something from their mech boys. Although at first it may seem that Orcs from this clan are just greedy and savage, only loving gold and jewels, they are probably the most technologically advanced of all Orcs. Not shying away from secret alliances with other races, Bad Moons gained access to a large amount of alien technology and weaponry, and their mechs, having good funding, are capable of producing more long-ranged weapons and strong armor. All Orcs in the clan are well-equipped and armed, which is why most Bad Moons prefer ranged combat, destroying waves of enemies with volleys of lead, retreating to more advantageous positions when the enemy gets close. All nobs and war bosses wear heavy armor and combi weapons, allowing them to obliterate entire squads of guardsmen with a single salvo. Anyone who dares to attack the clan's nobs in close combat will be shot down. Bad moons are extremely reluctant to engage in close combat and will do everything possible to avoid damaging their precious armor. To them, material wealth is far more important than martial glory. The largest and wealthiest orcs are called flashgits. Among orcs, this term refers to those who love to show off how important and rich they are. For these orcs, style is more important than brains. However, the arrogance and treachery of flashgits are met with disdain by more warlike orcs. Of course, orcs fitting the definition of flashgits can be found among all green-skin clans. However, there are the most of them among the Bad Moons. Like all orcs, members of the Bad Moons love to paint their armor and equipment in the clan's colors. For the Goths, this is black and white, while the Evil Sons predominantly use red. The Bad Moons mostly use bright yellow and black, and their totem is a primitive depiction of a crescent moon painted in the same yellow color. Also, unlike other orcs, Bad Moons adore wearing all sorts of adornments made of precious metals and piercing. Even the banners of this clan are often embroidered with gold threads. There are many renowned war bosses among the Bad Moons, but the most famous of them is war boss Nazdreg. At first glance, he is no different from other Bad Moons. This orc is rich and cunning like all his kin. However, the huge green skin displays an exceptional mind and patience for his kind, preferring to organize ambushes and quick raids instead of frontal attacks. Prisoners captured by Nazdreg have reported that the war boss speaks excellent Gothic and motivates his slaves not just with punishment, but often with rewards. Nazdreg was also spotted during the campaign on Medusa 5. After a series of battles, the war boss and his lads forcibly seized an Imperial transport shuttle and boarded the battleship, after which Nazdreg disappeared in an unknown direction. Another famous figure from the Bad Moons is Captain Badruk. Although he is no longer a full-fledged member of the clan due to being exiled for being considered too wealthy and powerful, the symbol of the Bad Moons still adorns his banner. His love for luxury has not diminished. The captain is often seen clad in gilded armor with a greatcoat draped over it, resembling the uniform of either a commissar or a fleet officer. The captain does not skimp on spoils for his pirates. They all strut around in richly decorated armor and with excellent weaponry. Badruk possesses an astonishing tactical genius, uncharacteristic of other orcs, enabling his band to terrorize not only the Imperial Merchant Navy, but also the Tau combat fleet. According to rumors, the Xenocide's raids are secretly and generously funded by the Imperium. But the Great War attracts not only strong and cunning orcs. Savages like the Snakebites also answer the call of plunder. The warriors of this clan can be recognized by their brown vests, tattoos that resemble sleeping snakes, and crests made of hairy squigs that they cultivate, and also by their skins. No orc loves skins and fur as much as the Snakebites. There are even those who wrap themselves with live snakes to show how tough they are. Moreover, their battle banners always signal their presence. If you see a yellow banner with a green snake, you can immediately recognize them. But more often, you realize the Snakebites are near when you start smelling squig stench. Unlike other orcs, the Snakebites disdain such complex technologies as the creation of vehicles and weapons. The clan trusts in well-familiar things: a heavy stick, a sharpened piece of bone, and a sharp chopper. While the Snakebites may not be wild orcs, they very much resemble them in their way of life and revolting manners, even by orc standards. Before the fight, they smear their skin with dirt and apply a primitive war paint over it. The clothing of clan members is also not elaborate. They often decorate it with wild animal fangs and poorly tanned pelts. The wild lifestyle of the Snakebites has led to their skin becoming much tougher than that of other orcs, though they now resemble old leather boots. As for the name of their clan, it most likely originates from an orc initiation ritual, wherein a young orc catches a venomous snake, allows it to bite him, and then sucks the venom from the wound, thereby proving his resilience. Thanks to this ritual, as well as the subsequent courses, Snakebites have immunity to almost all poisons, except for the very strongest ones. This strange love for everything poisonous has led to the orcs of this clan always traveling in the company of venomous snakes, spiders, and other creatures. periodically replenishing their collection on this or that world to always have them in sufficient numbers if the current planet lacks the necessary poisonous fauna for the snake bites. Possibly the collection of all living and poisonous creatures is connected with the fact that this clan is the best breeder of grots and squigs among all orcs. Their skill is so great that only the snakebites possess the expertise and knowledge in producing feed for the enormous squiggoths. The handlers of this clan are among the few who can keep these gigantic creatures in check, both on the battlefield and during space voyages. Compared to other orcs, the snakebites almost never stay in one place for long, preferring a nomadic lifestyle, leaving a planet immediately after defeating the enemy. According to Imperial scholars, this clan might be the last remnants of the original orc culture before the orcs came into contact with the rest of the galaxy. The snakebite's primitive way of life has resulted in the most advanced weapons within the clan ending up with the Gretchen, who also have to figure out how they work. The orcs, on the other hand, mainly use melee weaponry and do not rely on firearms, preferring to solve everything with brute force. Strangely enough, this works excellently for the snakebites. The tactic of this clan is rather simple. At first, hordes of squigs and grots are sent against the enemy to distract them and deplete their ammunition. Then the orcs enter the fray, finishing off the survivors. The usual absolute brutality of the snakebites is enough to destroy any opponent. Gathering strange and poisonous creatures from all over the galaxy, the snakebites inevitably encountered the Tyranids, a meeting that spawned a new orc tribe named the Worm Killer. The snakebites' handlers often tell the story of the formation of this tribe. One day this tribe was hunting on a remote jungle world and found a strange fleshy spore covered in amber. Bringing it onto their ship, they opened the spore, releasing hundreds of small tyrannid organisms. The snakebites enjoyed hunting these creatures as their population increased. You kill one, and a dozen more crawl out of the ventilation shafts. However, other orcs, members of other clans, did not share the snakebites' enthusiasm, as their cruiser quickly turned into dangerous tyrannid jungles. Most orcs, except for the snakebites, were devoured by the Tyranids while the ship drifted in space. But those who managed to survive became experienced hunters of this type of xenos. In the end, nearly all the Tyranids were killed and the survivors united into a new tribe, calling themselves the Worm Killer. Covered in Tyrannid skulls and using their claws as weapons, the tribe members quickly grew bored of the routine hunts aboard the spacefaring warship. Thus, they released the remaining Tyranids onto the first available planet, making their pastime more expansive. While members of other clans predominantly fought humans, the snakebites ensured that the Tyranids bred prolifically. When the humans were defeated, the tribe's orcs found that the planet had enough Tyranids to provide a good hunt. According to Imperial records, the Worm Killer tribe infested over a dozen planets, expanding their hunting grounds to a significant segment of space. Tribes primarily composed of snakebites generally prefer to fight alone. However, there are those among them who are eager to join the war of a stronger and more famous war boss, such as Gajkul Mag Uruk Thraka. One such example is the tribe of snakebites and savage orcs residing on the world of Krongar. They might have continued in their isolated existence had Gajkul not been seized by an inexplicable desire to visit their world before his campaign on Octarius. When the prophet of the Wa landed on the planet, crowds of orcs, adorned with strange tattoos and piercings, greeted him as a god. After a ceremonial hunt of a strange beast, the orc warlord, Grak the Mighty, who ruled the planet, handed over all his orcs to Gajkul, empowering his Wa with new strength. However, not everyone is loyal to the champion chosen by the gods. For instance, war boss Grutbrog, upon Thraka's return, was in no hurry to join him. The stubborn and proud leader openly refused to submit to Gajkul, and he paid for it. It took a week to subdue Grutbrog, during which Thraka decapitated the old war boss twice, after which he finally yielded and became his loyal follower. Like the Blood Axes, the Death Skulls hold a bad reputation among other orcs. However, unlike the former, the contempt for the latter is well justified. The ill repute of this clan comes from their skilled ability to loot and pillage not only enemies, but also their kin. Many of them could become proficient mechs, given the ingenuity they display during thefts. But their passion for gathering everything not nailed down and hiding it in stashes occupies them far more than constructing anything new. Even war does not captivate them as much as the subsequent looting. If the orcs of this clan fought with the same fervour they apply to scavenging the dead, they would become a truly unstoppable force. The ubiquitous pilfering by orcs often attracts large crowds of aggrieved victims to the Death Skulls' camps, eager to reclaim their belongings, only to leave not just empty-handed but stripped of everything else they had. The Death Skulls possess a supernatural ability to stun another orc and search him while his body is still airborne. However, it is not only orcs who find their possessions in the hands of these greenskins. Many Imperial commanders have felt the might of stolen or restored lemon russes, rhinos, predators and baneblades. At the same time, during prolonged battles, some have witnessed the Death Skulls attacking with reconfigured Eldar super heavy grav tanks under the leadership of an Imperial Titan, adorned with their clan's blue-horned skull symbol. All Death Skulls are incredibly superstitious and believe that the colour blue brings them luck and attracts the attention and favour of Gork and Mork, who provide them protection. Therefore, they paint not only their clothing, but also their weapons and machinery in blue. The latter, in turn, functions much better than similar equipment in other clans. According to their beliefs, on the night before battle, the Death Skulls apply blue war paint to their bodies, and some even paint themselves completely. Additionally, orcs of this clan love to adorn their clothing with skulls and bones of both animals and human Ixenos. Some orcs even fashion breastplates from the ribs of their enemies. Moreover, similar to the Blood Axes, the Death Skulls like to decorate their clothing and armour with war trophies taken from dead soldiers who dared to cross their path. Considering the Death Skulls' penchant for looting and theft, it is no surprise that their ranks include many looters. Despite the fact that all orcs tend toward rivalry, looters from other clans welcome all Death Skulls as brothers in arms and always strive to maintain good, even friendly relations with them. However, other orcs consider the looters of their own clans and all Death Skulls as thieving scoundrels who need to be constantly kept under watch. Perhaps it is this attitude that has united the naturally similar orcs. All orcs of the Octarius sector are well aware of the reputation of Nabrot Stubfingers, who has achieved unparalleled skill in appropriating things. It is said that if Nabrot cannot steal something, then others should not even try. He has often been seen running with full arms of excellent weapons, teeth, and other poorly guarded riches. However, this orc doesn't steal just for profit. Some items Nabrot collects simply because they amuse him. For instance, he stole a statue of the Emperor from spire of the Illuminous Cathedral on Tobin's Rest. The Sisters of Battle, who defended this shrine world, vowed to avenge the orc as soon as they saw that the stolen statue was mutilated and affixed upside down to the front of Shortfinger's personal battle wagon. However, the jewel of Nabrot's collection is undoubtedly the super-heavy tank Baneblade, which he stole on the Forge World of Kernak III. Following his war boss into battle, he encountered a well-defended position manned by Cadians who were covering several super-heavy tanks. Shortfinger quickly realized that he needed at least one such tank in his possession. Leading a small squad of Death Skulls, he managed to infiltrate the secured territory through a network of sewer tunnels. While his boys distracted the guardsmen, sowing chaos and destruction everywhere, Nabrot stole the Baneblade and fought his way back to the Mork position. He named his tank Gork's Foot, saying he did it to give all opponents a good kicking. However, one day another orc from his war pointed out that the war boss had already named a gargant that way, to which he replied, "Well then, this is the other foot." Since then, Shortfinger's tank has been called Gork's Other Foot. Another legendary thief among the Death Skulls is Gutsbag Grabber. He was renowned as a daring loota, excellent at liberating vehicles from their crews. According to some stories, he once managed to capture an Imperial Titan and unleash its power on the Imperium's positions. However, when a member of the Death Skulls clan can tame his nature, he might become a decent mech. All orcs of the clan excellently determine the usefulness of the things and junk they find and are capable of assembling genuinely impressive items from them. If an orc has enough concentration and attention, becoming a mech, he will occupy a high position in the clan, as all Death Skulls love any technology, from simple shooters to tanks and other war gear. Additionally, Death Skull mechs are known for producing extremely lethal combi weapons, which they can create practically from any Imperial weapon or other Xenos weapon. It is also known that there are many cunning and resourceful Gretchens among the Death Skulls who often engage in looting and selling advanced stolen gear together with the orcs, which for some reason the Death Skulls can't keep for themselves. The roar of bikes interrupted Nextomper's thoughts. Turning around automatically, he saw a line of red motorcycles, adorned with the emblem of the Evil Suns, a bright red face of a grinning orc surrounded by black sun rays, speeding by the workshop. Damn these Evil Suns, thought the mech. How long are they going to keep doing laps? They should be scavenging for scrap instead, though why would they care? As long as they have fuel, they'll keep riding, or until they crash into a wall. I should have a talk with their mechs. Maybe they'll teach me how to paint tracks properly so they go faster. No matter how many times I've tried, it never turns out like the Evil Suns do. And indeed, every member of the Cult of Speed and the Evil Suns knows for sure that the Red Ones go faster. The obsession with the colour red among members of this clan dates back to the ancient orc ritual of painting their mounts with the blood of their enemies. There is also a version that the devotion to red is a reflection of an ancient blood ritual that the orcs performed to appease the red sun that illuminated their original homeworld. According to this theory, the orcs believed that the weakening sun needed a blood offering to sustain its life. One way or another, the colour red has firmly entrenched itself in the consciousness of orcs, but it has achieved special reverence only among the Evil Suns. They paint everything with it: clothing, weapons, machines, airplanes, and even their faces. When the paint runs out, they use enemy blood, soaking fabric with it or applying it to their faces. Even among other orcs, they stand out for their thirst for speed, trying to move across the battlefield as fast and loudly as possible, crashing into crowds of enemies and causing a bloody carnage, only to then slam the gas pedal to the floor and rush towards the next battle. Members of this clan are some of the most experienced drivers and pilots, and the skill of the aces of the Evil Suns can easily compare to that of the pilots of the Imperial Navy or the tank crews of the Astra Militarum. Due to the total mechanization of this clan, the Imperium sometimes finds it difficult to engage with the Evil Suns, as most Imperial technology cannot keep up with their modified bikes, war buggies or trucks. Being natural-born racers, the Evil Suns focus little on anything other than fast and loud rides on their trucks or war bikes. Even when they fight on foot, they still resemble a roaring red wave, sweeping everything in their path. However, most of the time they prefer to fight exclusively on bikes or trucks, sometimes driving them directly into buildings. Such tactics often result in breakdowns, but this is not a significant problem for the Evil Suns, as all orcs of this clan are well versed in mechanics. They constantly modify and retrofit their vehicles, installing more powerful engines and weapons. Due to their obsession with racing, many members of the clan joined the Cult of Speed, one of the largest and most popular orc subcultures. Orcs of this cult are very dependent on the sensations they get during fast riding. Even a good fight doesn't attract them as much as fast, furious races. War bikes and buggies are all that these orcs need for happiness, as the rest of the orc technology cannot accelerate as much. Among the Cult of Speed, the war boss of the Evil Suns, Grughak, is particularly well known. During the Third War for Armageddon, he followed Gajkul, but to Grughak's surprise, Gajkul left the Cult of Speed in reserve rather than sending it into battle. Patience has never been a virtue among maniacs who crave only races, but the prophet of the War was adamant, and eventually, with a strike of his adamantite head, he turned Grughak's custom bike into a heap of scrap metal. Heavy-handed arguments did not bypass the war boss himself either, after which he calmed his fervour and began to await orders. Only when breaches formed in the walls of the condemned hive were Grukak and his cult of speed allowed to joyride through the wide avenues. In addition to the cult of speed among the evil sons, various formations of bikers are widely popular. They are joined by those orcs who cannot last even 5 minutes without the roar of a motorcycle, as well as the clouds of dust and exhaust that follow them. In battle, this gives them an advantage, as it serves as an excellent smoke screen, and by the time the bikers burst out from this screen, they are already in the thick of the fight. However, the bikers' obsession sometimes works against them. Many cunning warbosses use them as live mine clearers, detecting ambushes and various traps through their sacrifice. Additionally, bikers are often sent to attack enemy convoys, raid depots, or strike weakly defended sections of the front. Bikers rarely live to old age and often die in their first battles, yet even among them there are grey-haired veterans. Such is the warboss Jardsnark the Ripper, a hero of numerous battles not only against the Imperium or Xenos, but also against his own kind. The Ripper was one of the most powerful and experienced warbosses who attacked the planet Castoral Novem, amassing considerable loot during the Imperial forces' counter-raid. Unlike other warbosses, Jardsnark prefers light armor, adhering to the traditions of the Evil Sons bikers, who in battle prefer speed and mobility over armor. In combat, the warboss prefers to circle around his enemy on his half-track bike beast, cutting down foes with his circular saw gauntlet, for which he earned the nickname Da Ripper. Goths are the very orcs that come to mind for every Imperial general in the echoing halls of the Departamento Munitorum when it comes to the greenskins. And it is precisely them that parents across the Imperium frighten their unruly children with. Size, strength and cunning are the most crucial traits for any orc of this clan. In a society where might triumphs, it is the Goths who are the most dominant and powerful. Since the orcs of this clan are larger than others, their arms are much longer and their shoulders broader. In orc society, this gives them an advantage because anyone who possesses sufficient strength and cunning can reach the top. Thus, it is often the Goths who become war bosses in various orc formations. Moreover, the greenskins' size helps them easily overpower almost any opponent and survive the most grievous wounds. So, if there are enough orcs, even space marines can't stop the Goths. Goths are extraordinarily conservative. They avoid deception and tricks like other orcs and despise stealth. The tactics of the Goths lack subtlety, and they mainly rely on close combat and infantry, so practically every battle begins and ends with the same screams and war cries as the Goths charge headlong into their enemies. Even technology is mostly used by these greenskins not as combat units, but exclusively for transportation purposes. But mostly the Goths, armed with choppers and sluggers, go into battle on foot, occasionally supported by killer Khans and deft dreads. The nobs of the Goths are almost always clad in mega armor, as it gives the already strong orcs even greater physical power and protection. For every orc, a good fight is a celebration, but only the Goths truly live for war and crave battle alone. However, the Goths' belligerence often plays a cruel trick on them, as it has been noted multiple times that in the absence of enemies they attack other orc clans or fight each other. The Goths shun any camouflage, considering its use cowardly and an insult to Gork and Mork. They also do not favour any tattoos, bright colours or chromed equipment parts. Instead, they prefer modest skull earrings, amulets in the form of dead heads, jaws-shaped gorgets, large nose rings, and enormous horns carved from the bones of giant creatures. It cannot be said that for the Goths, all of the above is mere decoration. For them, it is more a way to emphasise their aggressive and brutal nature. Their character is also reflected in their clan totem, which is the head of a black bull with huge horns over a red circle. Black is also the primary colour for clothing and equipment, as the Goths consider it the only fitting hue for such grim and serious orcs. And the only adornment for their armour can be the black and white checkerboard markings on the shoulder pads. However, it is forbidden for the groats and slaves of the Goths to wear black. Their clothing must be painted in neutral tones, and only the grots of the clan are allowed to sport black war paint on their faces. Suddenly, a terrible crash was heard on the outskirts of the camp, as if something huge had fallen nearby. Woodaka paid no special attention to the noise, merely shook his head and continued observing the grots who, having finished dismembering a knob, began sorting through the scrap metal found in the vicinity. In Neckstomper's opinion, only one group of orcs could make such noise during landing, although in most cases it could rather be called a controlled crash. Those who, according to the mech, landed near the camp caused him, as a Goth, far more disgust than even the blood axes. These orcs were true outcasts with no sense of honor whatsoever. For money they were ready to serve anyone and kill whoever was ordered. Neckstomper, ignoring everything but his work, thought that freebooters had landed near their camp. Freebooters cannot be called a proper clan, as their ranks consist of renegades who, for various reasons, left their native clan and took up piracy. The reasons can vary. Some survived a devastating war and lost their entire tribe, after which such orcs simply had nowhere to go. Others were expelled for misdeeds that are unacceptable in orc society. And then there are those who left of their own accord, simply because they got bored. One way or another, all of them converge into wandering gangs and spread chaos, becoming mercenaries in the service of the Imperium or orc tribes. Having abandoned clan symbols, the freebooters personalized their attire to emphasize their status as mercenaries, devising new decorations and symbols for themselves. Some of them seek to start a new life this way, others wish to remain anonymous, and yet others have simply forgotten who they once were. Despite the great variety in freebooters' symbols, the Imperium has noted that they all share a common emblem, a cherry orc with crossed bones, dubbed the Jolly Orc by Imperial officers. Freebooters can also be recognized by their makeshift prosthetics and eye patches, as most gangs lack access to pain boys and mechs, forcing them to treat themselves by replacing damaged limbs with crude hooks or iron legs hastily fashioned from the nearest scraps. Additionally, due to the absence of mechs, freebooters gangs travel through space on rickety spacecraft, even by greenskin standards, and establish bases on remote planets or in asteroid fields. However, if a sly and successful orc leads the freebooters, he can rally to his side all the necessary allies, thereby commanding an entire pirate fleet equipped with the latest in orc engineering. Most often such an orc was previously a war boss, but was ousted by a younger contender who failed to kill him. Such a war boss and his closest retinue of nobs form the core of the future freebooter gang. Upon founding his pirate band, the orc transforms from a war boss into a captain and begins to dress accordingly. Orc captains often sport large tricorn hats and thick greatcoats, under which it is convenient to conceal weapons. One of the most renowned orc captains is Morgash Kulgraz. Morgash is a cunning and ambitious orc who ruthlessly deals with anyone who challenges his position. His first appearance was within the Coronis Expanse aboard his space hulk, Gork's Fist. The hulk was heavily damaged, but filled to the brim with all sorts of loot from various parts of the galaxy. No one can say where Gork's Fist had been or how long it travelled through the warp before arriving at Coronis. However, Morgash's grand entrance into the Undred Teeth cluster did not go unnoticed. Kulgraz proved to be a true master of space combat and quickly eliminated other orc captains, gaining control of the largest ship in the cluster, the massive battlecruiser De Worldbreaker. Filling his crew with the most vicious survivors from the captured ships, Morgash soon turned his attention to the local rogue traders and smugglers. As a true pirate, Kulgraz attacked swiftly and mercilessly, leaving only a handful of survivors after his raids to spread his fame across the Coronis Expanse. Tactics are not a strong suit for orcs, especially not for freebooters. Thus, the pirates are straightforward, like a shot from a lasgun. When they see suitable prey, they rush at full speed, simultaneously firing all available weapons. Next, the enemy ship will be rammed and boarded. More cunning captains set up ambushes on passing convoys, appearing unexpectedly from asteroid fields or the edge of the system. Even attacks on warships of the Imperial Navy have already become commonplace for many freebooters. However, when a captain believes that attacking convoys yields too little plunder, his ship or fleet sets course for the nearest inhabited planet or space station for plundering. Since it is common to find pain boys, renegades from the cult of speed, and even mobs of deaf dreads among the freebooters, planetary invasions are not a significant problem for them. But it also happens that the orcs simply want a good fight. Then they storm planets or stations as well, but after the plundering they do not hide in the nearest asteroid field, but stay behind to see who or what will come to stop them. However, what Nextomper took for the landing of freebooters turned out to be a piece of a kill cruiser falling from orbit. Chaos Space Marines from the Word Bearers were also interested in conquering this world. During the Horus Heresy, they discovered something valuable in the mountains of this planet, but were defeated by loyalist legions. And only after millennia did the survivors manage to return for the plunder. And while the orcs were staring bewilderedly at the sky, a battle was already raging in space with a fleet of Chaos Space Marines who intended to bring the orcs' ships crashing down on their heads and then mow through the planet like a bloody scythe.